Clerk, conduct a roll call.
Mayor Marchand.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Farini.
Here.
Council Grasso.
Here.
Council Dwyer.
Here.
Council Reynolds.
Here.
Council Penelakis.
Here.
Council Whitehouse.
Here.
Councilor Smith. Councilor Hines.
Here. Very good. As I said a moment ago, this is a public hearing. We'll get into the rules of the road for those that are here to speak tonight, either for or against or simply about different parts of this budget. Before we get into the actual public hearing part where folks can come up to the mic, we're going to have a series of brief presentations from each of the different segments of our municipal governance. It'll include a summary by the city manager, followed by presentations from the school, police, and fire departments, and then a quick conclusion from the city manager, and then we'll get into the input from the public. So with that, we'll go to City Manager John Bohenko.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening. Before we get started, I'd like to have some of the staff from the Finance Department hand out some of the charts that I'll be referring to and other presenters will be referring to tonight. As the Mayor said, tonight's public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2008 budget covers expenditures for all city services, including schools, police, fire, recreation, library, public works, and other municipal departments for the period of July 1, 2007 through June 30, 2008. In accordance with Article 7 of the City Charter, I formally submitted the fiscal year 2008 budget to the City Council on April 6th. Tonight's public hearing will include presentations from the Superintendent of Schools, the Police Chief, and Fire Chief regarding their proposed budgets. After their presentations, the Mayor will open the public hearing for comments and/or questions from the public. After the public has had an opportunity to comment, the Mayor and City Council will adjourn the public hearing until Monday, May 14th, at which time it will be reconvened after the City Council has conducted its work sessions with various city department heads. The May 14th hearing will allow the public to give additional feedback once the City Council has had more in-depth budget discussions. The second hearing is intended to enhance the opportunities for public input on the budget process. Now that I've discussed the format, let me take a few minutes to talk about the budget. The fiscal year 08 budget reflects prior accomplishments, current initiatives, and was designed to maintain a quality of life and level of services that our residents have come to expect. The budget continues to benefit from implemented financial policies to address long-term liabilities and improve our fiscal stability. These include, but not limited to, the creation of a fund balance ordinance, the Leave at Termination Stabilization Fund, the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund, the Capital Improvement Plan, and the Rolling Stock Replacement Program. As a result of these many efforts, the city's bond rating remains at its highest level ever, realizing substantial savings to our taxpayers in the form of reduced borrowing costs annually. Last year, I believe we had many major accomplishments. But I'd like to highlight three achievements in FY07 that were a result of the cooperation from the City Council, residents, and the dedication of city staff. And they are the dedication of the Public Library in January of 2007, the City of Portsmouth becoming the first New Hampshire municipality to receive the Distinguished Budget Document Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association, and the recognition of the Pierce Island Wastewater Treatment Plant in September of 2006 by the New Hampshire Water Pollution Control Association, naming it as the Plant of the Year. In addition, Portsmouth's economy continues to grow and our city remains attractive to new business and visitors alike. Our central business district is the focus of several significant development and redevelopment proposals that will change our downtown landscape, particularly in the northern tier section. This growth has resulted in continued expansion of our tax base, which has had a positive impact on our efforts to limit tax increases this year and into the future. This year, I'm submitting the budget as requested from the School Board, Police Commission, and Fire Commission. It has been carefully prepared to allow the continued provision of critical services and improvements to our infrastructure. With the exception of the Fire Department's request to reinstate the position of Fire Prevention Officer, this budget was designed to maintain a status quo level of services and does not require the addition of any new full-time staffing. In fact, overall, the total full-time position count for this budget represents a net decrease of 1.7 positions. As outlined on Chart 3, you can see the 1.7 position decrease. In addition, to implement a uniform citywide approach for long-term and short-term capital investments in our city facilities, The fiscal '08 proposed budget includes a provision for contracted services of a facilities engineer. The responsibility of the engineer will be to assess all city facilities, including schools, and create a master plan for building improvements, which will include sustainable practices and energy management. For the next few minutes, I'd like to take a little time to talk about the specifics of the budget. As you can see on chart number 4, the proposed FY08 proposed budget is broken down into two areas, operating and non-operating. The total budget proposed is $80,400,000, or a $4.1 million increase over last year. The operating budget is broken into areas of municipal services, police, fire, and schools. Municipal services include such things as the library, public works, recreation, and other city departments. The operating budget is proposed at $64.5 million, or a $3.5 million increase over last year. The operating budget is broken down into the following major cost areas. 53% for the schools, 10% for fire, 13% for police, and 24% for municipal. The non-operating budget is tax anticipation notes, debt service, capital outlay, and contingency, and other items. And that is proposed to increase by $640,000, or 4.2% over last year. The non-operating budget consists of 48% of debt service, 9% for capital outlay, and 23% for our county tax. The total budget increase, as you recall, is $4.1 million, and it's broken into three areas. The first being personnel costs, and that is salaries, retirement, and health insurance account for approximately $3.1 million of the increase. Other operating, such as utilities, pupil transportation, etc., is anticipated to increase by $437,000, and non-operating is debt service, overlay, and capital outlay, $640,000. Now, municipal government in all areas, police, fire, schools, is very labor intensive, and 83% of the entire budget is for salary and benefits. Now, the major impact to the budget are in the areas of salaries, retirement, and health insurance. And you can see on chart number 12, this gives you a summary of all the increases by category. Now, the retirement portion of the budget is the portion of the budget that's really caused a lot of stress this year as we tried to build our budgets. As you can see from chart number 13, there has been an increase of $790,000, or 34% increase in our requirement for funding our retirement. And we are required by law to send those retirement payments to the state who administers that for our municipal employees. You can see that municipal is going up 32%, police 28%, fire 16%, and schools 50%. The next area is health insurance. And health insurance costs continue to grow and impact the operating budget substantially. The Health Trust, which is the city's insurance provider, has established a rate that will give us total premiums of just over $11 million. This is an increase of nearly $1.2 million, or 12% over last year. City employees contribute to the health insurance premium, and that will be over about $2 million, or approximately 18% of total costs, leaving the city's budgeted share to just over $9 million. The Health Insurance Stabilization Fund allows for departments to budget annually the average growth in health insurance rates established by the Health Trust over 10 years. For FY08, this was 11.7%. As you can see, in the past, this would be the average of these years in the past. So 11.7% is budget. Even with the Stabilization Fund, the cost, the increase is approximately $1 million in the FY08 budget. Salaries and personnel costs are determined by the 15 collective bargaining units for employing our teachers, firefighters, police officers, and other municipal personnel staff. For each collective bargaining unit agreement, salaries adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index for November to November. For FY08, this impact was 2.06%. In addition to the cost of living adjustments, employees who have not reached the top step in their job classification receive step increases. As you can see, the CPI went up 2.06%, but the actual salaries are going up 3.52%. And that's because 43% of the employees in the police department are on step increases, fire department 23%, school department 38%, and municipal 27%. And the reason that they're on the step increases is because they're new employees. A lot of employees are retiring. We're going through a cycle right now where we have a lot of retirements in these departments. A bright spot in the area of personnel costs is workers' compensation, where premium rates will decrease by 5% or overall net decrease of $33,000 for fiscal year 08. Once again this year, the city is not alone in having its budget impacted by high costs of electricity, gasoline and diesel, natural gas, and heating oil. Although the proposed energy budget amount of $2,400,000 reflects only a 1.3% increase over FY07, the budget has increased by 38.5% in just 2 years. And you can see in fiscal year 06, the budget amount for energy for the city was $1.8 million, and now in 08, we're at about $2.4 million. However, we're taking steps to address this area. The issue of sustainable practices has been identified as an important goal in the city's recently adopted master plan. The mayor and city council have appointed a 7-member committee on sustainable practices to work with city staff, local officials, and the community to identify initiatives to reduce both the cost and consumption of energy and other resources. The city council adopted resolutions in 2006, making Portsmouth the first municipality in the Seacoast and one of only a handful in the state to formally pledge to take steps to reduce global warming. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Robert Lister, Superintendent of Schools. After Dr. Lister, the police chief and fire chief will make their presentations. At the end, I will conclude tonight's presentation by reviewing revenues and the tax rate. Dr. Lister? There you go. Just that one right there.
Mr. Bahenko, Mayor Marchand, members of the City Council, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. We have, I'd like to co-present with Steve Bartlett, who's the school business administrator. We do have several slides that we'd like to go through. First of all, we'd like the City Council to know that we have followed all the guidelines that the city manager has put forth, and we are following that as a rule. We have are not asking for any new positions this year. We're not asking for any new programs, so we have no new net positions. We follow the City Council recommendations. We are combining services with the city. 2 examples include the legal department and the athletic department. We've done some reorganizing within the school department. We've made reductions in the school department, at the same time being respectful to the taxpayers, yet striving to provide a quality education to the students in Portsmouth. You'll see that the mission statement that we have is it is the purpose of the Portsmouth School Department to educate all students by challenging them to become thinking, responsible, contributing citizens who continue to learn throughout their lives. I would only say that we're very proud of our students in the schools, our 2,600 students, and our highly qualified staff and support staff. Some of the goals that we have for 2006 and 2007 administrative goals are to provide a personalized education for every student, focus on literacy in grades pre-K through 12 through 5 areas, which include curriculum instruction, assessment, professional development, and certainly community engagement. We want to maintain high community educational standards. We want to focus on direct classroom instruction to children while maintaining appropriate class size. We want to focus on early education through full-day kindergarten. We want to continue to recruit, train, and retain quality teachers in our classrooms, administrators, and support staff. We also want to properly fund building, grounds, and maintenance budgets that we have in the school department, and we want to balance responsibility to taxpayers with the educational needs of our students. The next slide shows some trends that are fairly stable according to this chart and information that we have. And I would only say that demographics is playing an important part in everything we do in all departments, and the school department is no exception. The school board is looking very closely at trends and student populations and demographics, because we will use that information as we plan for future programs in the schools.
Thank you. The first slide is the consolidated program revenue projections for the school department, and this shows all the revenue sources for all the funds that affect the school department. As you can see, you got to go back one. Yeah, thank you. As you can see, more than 3/4 of the general fund comes of the total consolidated program comes from the general fund. Out of the other 24% that's left, we have 14% of our revenue comes from tuition, 5% from federal, 3% from the state, a majority of which of that is building aid, and 2% from other. The next slide just breaks down the same consolidated program expense projections for all funds, but it breaks it down according to where they're accounted for. 81% you can see are accounted for in the local general fund. Of the other 19%, 10% are accounted for in the special revenue fund expenses. 7% comes from the city capital budget for debt service on the school buildings, and 2% from food service. As the last slide showed, 81% of the total budget is general fund expenses. And this slide shows the impact summary and breaks some of those categories down further. 2.6% of the increase over last year was for salaries, as the city manager has already outlined in his slides. 11.7% was for health insurance, 50% for retirement. 6.8% is left for operating, and that's partly to make up for underfunding maintenance in previous years. That leads us to the overall increase of 5.89% over 2007 for an increase of about $1.9 million. This slide shows the general fund expense categories, and as you can see, 85% of our general fund budget is made up of salaries and benefits. That only leaves 15% for operating expenses like services, utilities, supplies, and equipment.
And the last slide that we have is a reflection of one of the questions that came up last year, which had to do with the per pupil cost. And this slide just illustrates that the per pupil cost is an allowable tuition by the Department of Education as a formula. What it does not include is food service, it does not include transportation expenditures, and it does not include supplemental expenditures. What it does include, so if someone were to say, what do we get for our money? Per pupil cost, it includes salaries and benefits for the people at home, services performed by others, repairs and maintenance, utilities, supplies, equipment, regular education, career education, special needs, English as a second language, art, music, library, co-curricular, athletics, grant-funded programs, as well as fees and tuition based upon programs like the PASS program, the alternative school. And again, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and provide some input about the school budget. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Police Chief Michael Magnet.
Thank you. Just want to check and make sure this thing's working. Mayor Marchand, City Council, City Manager, citizens, thank you for this opportunity to talk about your police department. This evening, I'd like to highlight our activity for 2006, some of the new ideas we've been working on, and our proposed budget for 07-08. We are constantly evaluating our programs and practices to see what works and what does not. Fiscal year 06-07 has been a busy one for the department, but we continue to make strides in the areas that directly affect quality of life, including traffic enforcement, motorcycle noise, and the chronic homeless population that live on our streets. We have gained ground in the fight against drug and alcohol abuse among our teens, DWI enforcement, illegal narcotics, child pornography, online solicitation of children, and all forms of cybercrime. We have focused on officer safety, technology deployment, and working with neighborhood communities. This is part and parcel of the community policing philosophy that we embrace at the Portsmouth Police Department. We try to be proactive in all aspects of policing rather than reactive. Everyone knows that the police department regularly patrols the streets. What people may not realize is that we respond to citizens' concerns about traffic issues through the use of directed patrols, whether it be complaints about traffic enforcement, red light violations, speed, or loud motorcycles. Directed patrols basically is time that is designated away from regular patrols that the officer can use to work on problems and issues on his or her beat. A good example is Jake brakes. Jake brakes, for those of you who aren't familiar, are the noisy air compression brakes that more and more 18-wheelers are using, and they continue to be a source of numerous complaints. Last year, the city enacted an ordinance to restrict the use of Jake brakes. The PD worked with the DPW to place the proper signs in affected neighborhoods. The officers personally spoke with 37 different trucking companies and handed out over 200 letters to affected businesses. Finally, we've followed up continued education with enforcement. From January through December of '06, reported crime was up 1%. In the category of serious crimes, such as those listed here, we are seeing an alarming increase, and this concerns us. This increase is reflective of the national trend regarding serious crimes. Dealing with serious crime is time and resource intensive, and it translates into more work for our officers in responding and more complicated investigations for our detectives. Under the category of new initiatives, this last fall, just before winter, Captain Ferlin, Captain Champlin, along with Deputy Chief Len DeCessor, met with 20-plus social service agencies and property owners to discuss the homeless populations that were residing in outdoor camps on both city and private property. Most, if not all, of these sites were contaminated by garbage, used syringes in some cases, human waste, and posed a direct threat to the public and to children who are also playing in the area of many of the camps. A series of meetings resulted in an initiative whereby social service agencies worked with the police to visit these camps. They succeeded in moving the residents into shelters and at least providing the opportunity for some of them to access services. Captain Ferlin engaged property owners to go out and clean the sites, and through the winter we monitored these sites and we continue to monitor them. We also continue to work with the service providers and property owners as well. Accidents happen. We can't prevent them entirely, but we can work to reduce their numbers in the future. The police department is working closely with the traffic engineers and members of the Traffic and Safety Committee to analyze accident data to see what can be done to identify problem intersections and hazardous roads. Property damage accidents were down 4% over last year, while personal injury accidents were up 5% over 2005. In 2006, the state of New Hampshire officially recognized our enforcement efforts, citing the fact that it has been 5 years since Portsmouth has had an alcohol-related motor vehicle fatality. Most recently, we've revamped our training program to make better use of our existing resources. Over the last several years, the requirement to train officers and employees has increased at a pace beyond available training dollars. We've attempted to find ways to creatively schedule training into the workday. We've also increased the number of training programs that we sponsor within the police department. These are typically labor-intensive programs where we host a course for 4 to 5 days with 30 to 40 participants. However, hosting training programs provides us with a number of free training seats in return so that our own officers can attend and receive the training at no cost. In 2005, we sponsored 2 such programs. In 2006, we increased that number to 15. Our Bureau of Investigative Services is made up of several smaller units. Our Family Services section investigates anything from juvenile crime, child abuse and neglect, internet crimes against children, the monitoring of sex offenders, crimes against the elderly, and abuse and neglect cases with the elderly, to running successful prevention programs such as our School Resource Officer program, PAL basketball in the summer, our Explorer Post, underage drinking initiatives, and a number of other outreach programs that directly impact the lives of Portsmouth kids. Our General Investigative Unit is responsible for investigating all major crimes. In 2006, they investigated 205 felony cases, and that resulted in 91 persons being indicted. All 205 cases have gone forward in the court process in one form or another. Our Special Investigative Unit is made up of 2 officers. In 2006, they made 62 undercover drug buys, and since October have seized $24,000 in illicit drugs. New ideas means planning ahead. Suppose there was a gas leak in City Hall or a major incident that required us to vacate the police department. Where would we go? Who would answer our emergency calls? Through planning, grant funding, city dollars, and interagency cooperation, we're able to construct a redundant, backup dispatch center that can also function as an emergency operating center for the police department. Your police department faces a number of challenges in the coming year. We continue to struggle to find ways to deal with the mentally ill, addicted, and chronically homeless on our streets. The sad reality is that law enforcement and the criminal justice system have become the caretakers of last resort for this population, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Alcohol-related crime and disorder will continue to place demand on us. As I've said before, Portsmouth has the most liquor-serving establishments per capita than any other city or town in the state of New Hampshire. We face increased demands on our resources. We continue to be told by the federal government that we are the first line of defense in the war on terrorism on our own soil. We're told that we need to be better prepared for events such as a pandemic flu or a natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina. All the while, grant dollars that were available to us in the past are slowly drying up. Computer crime, especially internet crimes against children, continues to challenge us to keep up with the changes in technology. Growth in the city from one end to the other provides an ongoing challenge for us on how we staff and police. Last year, we began the initial phases of an internal organization that will take a number of years to complete. As the city manager told you, every department in the city faces the same challenges in preparing their budget. Rising insurance costs, contractual obligations, retirement rate increases, utility costs, all impact the bottom line. This year, we are submitting a budget request of $8.37 million, a 6.86% increase over last year. It represents what we believe is necessary to police the city and keep it safe. It retains the current staffing levels, but would provide us with some of the dollars to address needs in communications, fleet repair, training, equipment, and overtime. Less than 0.75%, or approximately $59,000, is requested to fund new batteries for our officers' radios, new batteries for our emergency power supply and our dispatch center, overtime for our investigations and training, and increases in fleet costs and existing service maintenance agreements. This chart just gives you a breakdown of the police department's budget. As you can see, that 88% of our budget is tied up in personnel costs. The other 12% is for operating and overtime, with it being divided equally between both. In spite of all the challenges facing us that are briefly outlined for you this evening, the police department still maintains a high level of professional excellence. We've won awards for our community-oriented policing, and most recently, we've been the recipients of 2 awards from the New Hampshire Attorney General's Office for our work in the areas of cybercrime and internet crimes against children. Our officers continue to devote hours of off-duty time to community issues. Coaching basketball, as well as coaching recreational basketball, bowling with the middle school kids once a week, our Explorer program, coaching football, volleyball, lacrosse at the high school. They continue to mentor kids and work tirelessly to maintain Portsmouth as a safe city. I take pride in the efforts of our officers to make and keep the city one of the safest in New Hampshire, if not one of the safest in the nation. Thank you. I'd like to bring up the Fire Chief, Christopher.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Portsmouth residents, I'd like to talk about the Fire Department's budget for fiscal year 2008. And start off by highlighting some of 07's accomplishments. After several years of attempts through federal grants, we were successful in obtaining grants for a new fireboat. and that is now in service in the Portsmouth Harbor. That was 100% Homeland Security money, no local dollars. We have a new engine in service at Station 3, a new ambulance on order for Station 3, and a structural firefighting gear maintenance program, including a commercial extractor to prolong the life of our firefighting gear. Our goals for fiscal year 08 is to enhance community fire prevention services, maintain minimum shift staffing of 13 personnel during the day and 14 at night, construct a new station in District 2. We are in the planning process and architectural work for a new fire station for that district, and continue our other infrastructure improvements to the capital improvement plan. Also, to maintain appropriate staffing levels to cover the city's 3 coverage districts. We're very fortunate if you divide the city into 3 equal parts. There's a fire station in the center of each one of them. And we want to establish the lead role in regional response to special hazards and maritime operations. We'll also work to maintain our apparatus fleet, a modern apparatus fleet, including a technical heavy rescue unit scheduled for this year, and continue efforts toward international accredited agency status. The annual budget for fiscal year 2008 is a 6.234% increase over fiscal year 2007. It includes the fire inspector position and that staffing of 13 during the day and 14 at night. In 2000, the fire prevention office was a 2-person office and has been a 1-person office ever since. We're merely trying to put that back to 2 people to keep up with the growth in the city. And our budget includes contractual obligations such as step increases, health insurance, and retirement. In closing, I'd like to thank the members of the Portsmouth Fire Department for the quality work that they do, City Council for all its support, and our Portsmouth Fire Commission for their support.
Thank you, Chief. Now that you've heard from the various departments about their needs, I'd like to talk about the revenue side of the budget. As with every New Hampshire local property taxes, every New Hampshire community, local property taxes remain the largest source of revenue to fund city operations. Portsmouth is typical of any other municipality, and 75% of all revenue basically that comes in is from property taxes. If adopted as proposed, the total FY08 budget would result in an overall 78-cent increase in the tax rate, or 4.97% over fiscal year 07. The increase would result in a tax rate of $16.50 per $1,000 of property value. In order to reduce this tax rate, the City Council must make policy decisions to either reduce expenditures, increase revenues, or a combination of both. Such policy decisions to increase revenue would mean establishing a new revenue source. Decisions to reduce the operating budget may result in the reduction of staff, and a decision to reduce the non-operating budget could result in the delay or the elimination of much-needed capital improvements. As a general rule, this year, for every 1 cent reduction in the tax rate, it is equal to approximately $37,000 reduction in expenditures, or an increase in revenues, or a combination of both. Over the next few weeks, I look forward to working with all members of the City Council, School Board, Police and Fire Commission, and department heads as we proceed through this budget work session and the work sessions that will start on May 1st. I believe that together we can finalize a budget for fiscal year 2008, which will continue to provide a high level of services while reaching an acceptable tax rate for the citizens of Portsmouth. This concludes tonight's presentation. Before I turn things over to the mayor to open it up for the public hearing and for public comment, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the school board, the police commission, the fire commission, the finance director, Judy Belanger, all department heads for their cooperation in the budget process. Your Honor.
Great. Thanks, thanks, John, and thanks to everybody for their presentations. At this point, we'll begin the public hearing process. There is no strict time limit. Obviously, please keep it to those items that relate to the FY08 budget, and obviously be considerate no matter what side of the issue you're on during the whole endeavor. So with that, we'll begin, and if you wish, whoever would like to come up, please do so.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, members of the council, city staff. Martin Cameron, 469 Ocean Road. I'm going to get into something it's part of the biggest, one of the biggest parts of the budget, and it doesn't seem like it fits in a way, but it's our major problem, and I'm talking about the retirement system. So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to start with, we sent some, going into this back in December. So I'd first like to read this one letter we sent out from the Association of the Portsmouth Taxpayers. At a meeting of the Association of the Taxpayers held on 6th of December 2006, the primary subject of discussion was the upcoming city budget. One item was common among all city departments and their increased budget. It was the New Hampshire retirement system deficit. We voted to send a letter to the head of our legislative delegation, Representative Jim Powers, requesting information on the system, because none of us knew nothing whatsoever about it. And a copy of this letter was also sent to each of the city legislative delegates. The association received a response from Representative Powers on the 9th of January 2007. Representative Powers stated, "In general, I understand that there are two reasons for the present difficulty. One is the bond rate in the present economy. The second factor was House Bill 1633. There was a portion of that, there was an act, 1633 is an act relative to eligibility, membership, and financing of the New Hampshire retirement system. This bill, which became law, gave employees the option to purchase up to 5 years service credit in the retirement system. This 5-year purchase of retirement credits, I've read articles from newspapers from Manchester and Dover and so forth and Concord, and they all trying to bring up the problem, but none of them mentioned this fact that this option to purchase the 5-year service credit. I'll get into that a little bit more here. Okay, and our city council has met with House Speaker Norelli and the Portsmouth reps on the 16th of January 2007, and again on the 16th of March to discuss 12 recommendations being presented in Concord. So we're glad to see that the legislative body and the council and so forth has been getting in on this, and well, I would say pretty well informed. The basic for the audience and for the people of the city and so forth, I'd like to mention something here on the total numbers in the system. The state contribution of the retirement system went from $59 million in 2005 to an estimated $76 million in 2007, or for 2007. Now, the assets available in the fund is $4,799,400,000. The total liability of the system is $6,674,000,000. So we have an unfunded liability of $1,874,600,000. That's probably, I don't know everything going on in the state, but that's probably the one of the biggest programs, money-wise, financially, that we have in the state, and we have almost a $2 billion deficit. What it means, it doesn't mean that those retiring in the next couple of years won't receive their full check, but projected out, it's about 65% funded. Okay, the employee contribution rates are set by state statute. The new rates that are going to go into effect, from what I picked up in some news, in 1st of July would be, for teachers, it'd be 5.8%. For the police, it would be 11.84%. Firefighters, 15.92%. And municipal employees, 8.74%. Now, also, the state funds 100% of all state employees, and the state funds 35% of city and town municipal employees. So we fund the difference of that 75%. But even the 35% that comes from the state, that also comes from we're the basic employer, the taxpayer. I won't get into the assumption rate. That gets kind of complex and hard to understand. But one bill here I'd like to mention, it's HB 568. It pertains to repeal the option to purchase the 5 years of non-qualified service credit. A little background on this. This bill was passed in 2006 by a couple of people. I understand that they weren't reelected. But anyway, it received little or no public notice or hearing. Since its enactment, unintended consequences have come to light, such as Group 2, which are police and firefighters, purchasing like the 5-year service credit, so they need only work like 15 years to qualify for a half-pay retirement and health insurance subsidy. The unintended consequence is thousands of members, I guess, exercise this option. This is not from me, this information. This came from the legislator to purchase the service credits. In order to do this, many took out home equity loans for the purchase, and it resulted in a raid on the future benefit obligations and increasing the unfunded liability of the system. So this is what we're confronted with today up here on the screen. There's millions of dollars in deficits, and this is what's increased our city budget this year, and a lot of it goes into this. So this is why I wanted to get into the retirement system, because it's affecting each $37,000 is, I think, is affecting one cent. So, and we're talking, what was it? Like on the retirement fund was a gain of $791,000 for the city, and for the health insurance, $960,000. So, a lot of money. The taxpayers, okay, the financial damage and the loss of these highly trained, experienced professionals is also a public safety concern. The taxpayers have invested millions into the training and service of all our employees. And they're not just employees. These are our friends and our neighbors. So we're asking the representatives and the state senators to give 100% effort to enact a stable, efficient, and just New Hampshire retirement system for the employees, the employers, and the taxpayers, who just can't afford anything less. This letter and detail was approved by the membership vote on the 14th of March. So, I also, as part of this, we corresponded with House Speaker Terry Norelli, and I'm glad to report that a beautiful letter that we received from the Speaker, and it was addressed to the Association of the Portsmouth Taxpayers. So I wanted to bring across that my point is that we feel that this is a very serious matter, and we want to be in touch with the City Council and also our legislative body. And it says, thank you for your letter of the 24th of February, and particularly for your vote of confidence in my ability to respond to the current challenges posed by the New Hampshire retirement system. As you know, it is imperative that we ensure the continued financial health of our retirement system for the many individuals who rely on it, as well as the citizens of New Hampshire who help fund it. As we work to secure the long-term health of the retirement system, it is critical that we treat all parties who have an interest in the system, including members of the retirement system, the state and municipal agencies, and the New Hampshire taxpayers. The continued health and viability of the retirement system is a great concern of mine, as it impacts many, if not all, the citizens of a state. The executive departments and the administration committee of the House will be looking closely at these issues and welcome all public input impacting their system. And it says, thank you for your suggestion regarding the establishment of a legislative planning committee. I will study the idea, discuss it with other legislators, and consider whether that or some other method would provide the most effective forum from which to consider any challenges posed by the system and how best to ensure its continued health. So I just thought I'd like to bring this to your attention, to let everybody know that down here at the grassroots, we're concerned, and I'm glad to see that our legislative body and the council are also concerned. Now, this begins really with you folks. You have, 15 contracts that have to be negotiated between now and next June. I think that's correct. So, and that's where the rubber meets the road. And you get in right at the bottom of where it all begins on these new contracts. That's where the rates increase or decrease or whatever. So this is why it's important, I thought, to bring this up now, because those 15 union contracts that have to be negotiated and voted on by the council are important to what our next budget will be for the next few years. So with that point, I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation tonight, and hope it all comes out with a small raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers this evening?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Bill St. Laurent, 253 Colonial Drive, and present and representing the taxpayers as president of the Taxpayers Association this evening. We have had a lot of meetings, as you have too, with this budget thing, and every year it's the same thing. We come to you and express our feelings toward it, and this will not be a different year, except this year. In the past, members have studied the budget, come in here with different ways that you could remove things from the budget, ideas about the school, the statistics about schools, about ratio of teacher and student. But we're not going to do that this year. We're not getting into that. We work very hard, but it doesn't seem like that either the school board or the council ever listens to our statistics. So we're just going to come in here and be rather brief tonight. The mayor has asked and hoped that the budget presented by the different departments would come between 3% and 4%, and it looks like that hasn't happened. The mayor seems to think, and I seem to read in the paper, that he would like to work with the council to keep the budget at that rate. Of course, 3% would be wonderful. Actually, 0 would be wonderful, but 3% is better than what's going to happen. Every year, they get their increases, 5%. Last year, the council did well, kept it, I believe, at 4%, somewhere in that range. 5%, I'm sorry, 5%. But that wasn't good enough. We still have to get this down. Will it ever come to a point where we're going to have like a 2% budget and with a possible of not exceeding the CPI? I would hope something like that would happen someday, because that would give the different departments the idea of where they're going to get their, how much money they're going to get, or where they should control spending. And spending is a problem, a big problem in all cities. Many towns have opted to cut, not to cut budgets, but not to give the departments the budgets that they're asking for. And I think that should be the same with the City Council in Portsmouth. Our salaries, our retirement increases or whatever are not going up at those rates. There's going to come a time when we'll be so out of control in spending, I don't know how we're going to be able to afford it. Towns have gone bankrupt in the past. And it seems like we're getting to that point. Not recently, in Sunday's paper, in the Fosters, income gap could spell trouble for the Seacoast area. It says the gap between the rich and poor is getting more expansive in New England, according to the research by the University of New Hampshire Casey Institute. It said high incomes, it says they'll continue to trend where only those with high incomes can afford decent housing on the Seacoast, with lower income earners now moving north. Well, it may also because of the increase in the homes, the valuations aren't helping, but along with the increase, the taxes are there too. And a lot of people can't afford to keep paying these taxes, and they're moving out. And then as far as school goes, according to this, I won't get into the detail of this, that middle income, when the middle income people move out and the lower income people move out, which seems to be a preference in a lot of towns, they take their children with them because children are expensive and it costs a lot of money to educate them. And that will help the taxes. That's a terrible thing to hear. We want children in our town. We don't want to lose them to other towns because they can't afford to live here. So we have to be careful with these future budgets. And if we don't start controlling them now, when will we? When will we fix it so people don't have to move out because they can't afford to stay here? That's basically what our group have been discussing. It's not something we want to bring to the council, but that's what's happening, and it's proof right here in the paper, in research by the University of New Hampshire. So I'd like to see the council stick to the 3 or not more than 4% increase, possibly just stay at 3%, and stick with the mayor on that. So in the future, that our children and our children's children won't be burdened with heavy, heavy taxes, or they won't even be able to live here, obviously, and only the rich and people without children will be able to live here. So I ask you to stick with that, with the mayor requests. I think that would be fair, although I'd like to see it low. We'd like to see it lower. But good luck, and it's not a difficult thing to do. I know, I've been up there, but do what you can and try to keep it within the 3%. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else this evening?
Kent LePage, 45 Melbourne Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. City Councilor, Mayor, City Manager John Bohinko, first of all, thank you. I'm not here to speak in regards to the school budget at this time. I'm very fortunate, though. As chairman of the school board, I received the budget book back 3.5 weeks ago and went into it great detail. And there's one or two reasons. A year ago, this place was filled. In fact, when we left Rye this afternoon, Steve Bartlett, Steve Zatchervack, and myself, I asked 2 gentlemen to make sure they saved me a seat. So there's one or two things that are going on here. One is the departments have either done their job and are really presenting real budgets to you, or everybody's home watching American Idol, seeing if Sanjaya will stay on and be knocked off. I believe it's the first. I believe that all these budgets, and I did go through them, and I understand what was being said about retirement, but there are things that we have very little control on, except in that of negotiations when that happens. I urge this city council to pass this budget as is. I look forward to the work sessions that we have in the next couple of weeks to get to the final portion of this. And it will allow us, hopefully, somewhere around May 22nd or between there and the 27th, that we can go ahead and hire teachers. We had hoped that we would be able to start to hire, but with the uncertainty of whether our budget will be totally in place, we can't go out and hire some of the teachers that have come in, and we are losing some candidates again this year, although we are ahead of last year. Lastly, as I stated, this budget, I believe, from the fire, the police, the municipal, and the school, is sensible and also reliable with the facts and figures inside the full budget book. That all you have to do is look at that since January 20th, gas has gone up a total of 71 cents. Subtracting out, that's per gallon, subtracting out the county tax, this will only go up this year a total of 67 cents. I never want to see an increase, but I believe that the city deserves this. I believe in what I've read in this book, and I urge everyone to take the time that has conflicts or disagreements with this budget book to really look at it and talk to those department heads. I thank you. Have a great evening.
Great. Thank you. All right. Others like to speak this evening?
My name is Eric Anderson, 38 Georges Terrace, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, for this opportunity to speak on the 2008 budget. I've tried to take the time to go through what's available for information. It was a tremendous amount of information. And start my comments in expressing my concern in the projected 2008 budget. I think it's important to begin with the fact that New England, and more importantly, New Hampshire, ingenuity has historically shaped our communities, and Portsmouth is a living example in our attempts to present to the public the way things used to be. We're concerned that this growing epidemic and losing this ingenuity component of our past heritage, and in this case it pertains to the costs associated with maintaining the city. We have a problem framed in chronic annual tax increases and have continued to take place, and now has transitioned us into complacency and jubilation when it's held to annual 4 to 6% increases, upward adjustments. Where is our ingenuity? Within the capital budget information are some interesting facts and conclusions. Within it, it's revealed, and I've mentioned this before, that prior to any consideration in of the 2008 capital budget, I believe we're, as of June 1st, 2006, we're approximately $86 million in debt, in bonding debt. Even though it is within tolerances of our legal debt limit based from the city's base valuation, this current capital budget request will add another $12.5 million of bonding debt in 2008, and considerably more in the out years between 2009 and 2013. With a this tax rate, that just the tax rate impact from the capital budget alone will keep rising and peak in 2013 with a 50% increase, almost a 50% increase from its current status. Many of these capital improvements or maintenance projects have multi-year funding to complete the task, so once approved and entered into, there is an annual funding requirement or obligation to finish the job. In the 136 line items making up the capital improvement budget, the projected costs are literally astounding. In our fast advancing disposable society, we're going to possibly tear down but still build 2 new state-of-the-art fire stations. The controversy over the middle school needs no introduction, but it's concerning that in either new or renovation, those are currently the only alternatives, both with $30 million price tags. Where is the ingenuity to accommodate the described need at a cost in consideration of the taxpayer? Whether it's to the general fund cash or bonding debt, your funding source is the taxpayer, and from this point of view, I'm very concerned. With regard to department budgets, I came forward to you last year with specific concerns. Without any malice to any individual department, this year's budget requests still have the same alarms. I'm sure many people read with interest the Sunday Herald's article with posted gross pay earnings for public employees. It was more interesting to compare these gross earnings with the published gross salaries that were published within the budget. There were instances of 85% increases beyond the base salary, and the running averages were more in the 20 to 30% above their base salaries. Even though the school department holds the trophy for the largest consumption of our budget and tax rate, being that there are only 1 in 5 households having school-age children, credit is due to see that out of the total 371 paid employees, overtime was held to $67,000. In comparison, 60 paid employees within the fire department had $626,000 in overtime and an additional $203,000 in stipends. I mentioned this last year. I know it's a concern with the upcoming contracts that will be taking place this year. It's a concern. I think it's a serious concern. There's a multitude of other factual information, and if I knew that that you could go beyond 3 minutes and Mr. Sullivan wouldn't be holding up my alarm clock to get out of here, I'd probably go on, but I'll try and wind it up here. A point is to be made: the city of Portsmouth has a stable resident population, approximately 21 to 22,000 people. It peaks and ebbs on a daily and seasonal basis from individuals either at work or to visit within the city. While this is a very admirable aspect of the city, it must be realized that the cost of maintaining this asset is strapped to its resident population, and it's not getting any cheaper. In closing, I hope to have made some points. There was still some thought into this decision of the budget. While you have the ultimate authority to decide on the requests that have been made, I, as the taxpayer, hopefully are part of your conscience. I'm addressing directly to you and other individuals within the system, which is a pool of talent and devotion that can address these issues. And I say this because I think and I feel that you have the ingenuity to do better. Ingenuity is the word here, Yankee ingenuity. I don't believe this budget's ready to be passed as proposed. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Anybody else who'd like to speak this evening?
My name is Mark Brighton. I live at 285 Union Street. The core rate of inflation in the month of March was 2.78%. An overall budget increase of 5.77% would be 205% that of the rate of inflation. And I'll try to keep these numbers to a minimum. Numbers can become not mind-numbing. But the police would leave the way with 246% increase, greater than the rate of inflation. The fire would come next with 225. The school department would be 211% greater than the rate of inflation. The municipal budget would be a modest 170% greater than the rate of inflation. And Mr. Mayor, a 3.5% increase, while laudable, would be 126% the rate of inflation. The new buzzword in Portsmouth seems to be sustainability, but it's typically we're talking about energy when we're doing it. We also need to consider budget sustainability. And each year when we have increases greater than the rate of inflation, it is not sustainable. It's important to realize that over the next several weeks, we will not be talking about slashing budgets. Even in my wildest fantasy of a 0% increase, that would not be a decrease. Right at the moment, folks, we only seem to be always talking about increases. I would beg you to try and do something even better than what Mr. Mayor wants of 3.5%, because the core inflation is 2.78%. And when we go above that, it just year after year, it is not sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else who'd like to speak this evening? That's the first time around. Public hearing we do 3 times around. Second time around, either for, against, or simply to any portion of this budget. Okay. And a third and final time, same rules of the road applying. And seeing none, I want to make sure we would not be closing this public hearing if my memory is correct. We would actually be recessing it because, and I want to make sure I get the right date here. Thank you. As we started, I think 2 years ago, we recessed the public hearing because we have a number of work sessions that relate to each of the budgets that you heard about tonight. They'll be certainly open to the public in terms of coming in and watching. They'll be held in this room. They'll also be televised live. There will not be public comment, the opportunity for public comment within those work sessions. But again, you certainly can come and watch them in person or watch them on TV. Indeed, we hope you will. Some dates for those work sessions begins on May 1st, Tuesday, May 1st. That'll be a work session involving the police and fire budgets. Then a few days later, on the 3rd of May, as a Thursday, that'll be the school department budget work session. And then on the 9th, that is the next Wednesday, there'll be a work session, same format, involving the municipal budget. Then on May 14th, we'll be reopening, if you will, the public hearing, which will be recessed effective any moment here this evening. So that's the process. And then soon after the 14th, within about a week and a half or so of there, we're hoping to be able to finalize the budget. There will likely be one more work session involving the council, again, same format, open to the public, on television, where we're going to be hashing it out after hearing everything, after hearing the public one more time, and coming up with something that hopefully we'll all be proud of, and certainly will be the result of a lot of work on all sides. So that's the format, and with that, that is the recessing of this public hearing until the dates I've mentioned, until 7 p.m. on the 14th. Great. Thank you very much.
No, recess.
Oh,
Recess.
move to recess, right?
Yes.
Recess.
Yep.
So we're adjourning
We need
this
that motion,
No,
right?
no,
Adjourning
we're
the meeting.
recessing the public hearing for the 14th.
That's what he
Right.
said.
And then, yeah.
Huh?
Move to adjourn this meeting.
I'm moving to adjourn this meeting.
Yep. Okay, I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting.
This meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you.